Hey guys, in today's video, I'm going to talk all about adjusting to linear settings and how I personally got used to them in Fortnite. Not only did I switch to linear last October, I have several friends and viewers that have switched since then as well, so I'm pretty familiar with how people switch and the struggles that they face when switching to linear. So I hope this video can be pretty helpful for you guys switching to linear since Legacy is getting removed this coming Friday. The first thing I want to talk about is that you have to set all the boosts and look dampening time to 0. The reason for this is that the whole point of playing linear is so you have a really consistent sense that reaches its maximum sensitivity right away. And all these boosts and dampening times will make your sense more like exponential. There's not really much of a point in playing on linear if you're going to use those mechanics to make your sense feel more like exponential. You want to find just a sensitivity that feels good for you all the time, rather than relying on the boosts and then potentially playing a lower sense. So that's pretty important. I also previously made a video this week about the differences between linear and exponential. If you haven't seen that yet, I would recommend watching it so that you can better decide which one you actually want to use. So the first thing we're going to talk about after the dampening time and the boosts being at 0 is going to be your X and Y sense. And since we have build and edit sense, the only thing I think you need to worry about for your base X and Y sensitivity is having something that is consistent for hipfire for you. Something that you can track people well with hipfire. Something that just feels good naturally with your hipfire. I recommend a range of 40 to 60 X and Y. For whatever reason, linear on Xbox and PS4 feels very different. My friend Sammy has played on both the Xbox controller a lot and the PS4 controller a lot. And he says that linear on Xbox controller at 40 feels like linear on PS4 controller at 50. So don't worry about playing on a potentially lower sense. The numbers are going to seem a lot lower than what you're used to just because linear is so much faster than what we're used to with Legacy. So a lot of people I feel try to play on a much higher sense than they actually should with linear, and this gives them the impression that it's actually really bad because their sense is way too high. Once again, I recommend a range of 40 X and Y to 60 X and Y. Somewhere in there will probably be good. And also, don't be afraid to play on a bit of a lower sense as you adjust to linear, even if it's outside of that range and you know it's something that you're probably not going to stick with. For example, I play on 40 X and Y myself, but when I was first getting used to linear for a bit, I played on 35 X and Y, and then I just slowly increased it until I got up to 40. And 40 felt good to me, so I've stayed there, but I might increase it in the future at some point, whatever. But yeah, don't be afraid to play on a slightly lower sense as you adjust to just the feel of linear and instantly being on your max sensitivity, because it can be pretty off-putting at first and then go up. I did this. I know several other people that have done this, and they all thought that it helped them, and I thought that it helped me get used to linear easier. So I would definitely recommend doing that. Build sense and edit sense is for your build and edits, obviously, and then ADS is for your ADS shots. See, we have all these multipliers and different tweaks for different settings. So that's why I think you mainly just want to find an X and Y that feels good for hipfire and then build the rest of your sensitivity around that. The best way to get used to a sensitivity, in my opinion, is to play zone wars or box fights. In general, even if you can't play something like this, just playing aggressive in pubs and getting in as many fights as you can over and over again will help you get used to the new sensitivity, because it's just all about building muscle memory. That's it. There's no special trick you could do to instantly be used to a sensitivity and have perfect muscle memory on it. You have to build it, and just building that muscle memory is what will make you consistent with a sensitivity. So getting in as many reps as you can with fights, I think, is the easiest way to do that. Just know that it's going to take time and that you probably shouldn't stress about playing well or losing games during this time period. You just want to get in as many fights as you can so that you can actually get practice on the sensitivity and get used to fighting people on that sensitivity. That's why I recommend playing zone wars or box fights, because you can get into a lot of fights very quickly without really having to worry about looting, without having to worry about dying or loading in and out of matches because the games start right away. And it's also just low pressure, because I know a lot of people, for whatever reason, pubs are more stressful for them and they care more about winning in pubs, even if they are trying a new sensitivity or new keybinds. So playing something like zone wars or build fights or box fights, just these creative modes that are low stress and lots of repetitive fights, can definitely help you get used to the new sensitivity faster. And that's what I would recommend doing personally. Edit courses and free building can also be very good for helping you find a certain build or edit sense. All of that's going to be preference though, because it's a multiplier. So your build and edit sense is just a number that multiplies your X or Y sensitivity when you go into that mode. So if you play on like a lower X and Y, you might need a higher build and edit than someone who plays on like a higher X and Y than you. It's all about preference and just having a good feel for the sensitivity. So don't really stress yourself about playing on really high stuff at first. Just get used to it. Get used to the feel for linear, put the time in, and you will get better. You can get better on linear. One thing I want to address is that people say that it's really like impossible to be consistent with ARs, medium to long range, and that's just simply not true. It's definitely harder than Legacy, and if you've only played Fortnite as your only shooter, and you've just been relying on L2 the entire time and you don't actually have to aim, you're probably going to have like learn how to aim properly. But as you'll see in these clips here, I played on linear for like 6 months, 5 months, and I'm pretty consistent with ARs. Not absurdly long range, but the range at which I want to be taking fights, my AR aim is really consistent. I feel like people stress long range way too much, but if you think about it, if someone is long range from you, you're likely not going to be able to get that kill unless they're really weak and you're just like third partying them or something. Your AR is going to hit for low damage, and odds are, at this point in time, the opponent's going to know how to build and protect themselves, and you're really not going to pressure that fight too much. So I wouldn't recommend worrying about long range too much. I feel like a lot of people stress that. I feel like that's the two biggest problems people have when it comes to adjusting to linear. They try to fight way too many long range fights. They still play like they're a Legacy player, and they, for some reason, try to play on way too high of a sense because their brain is still like in that Legacy sensitivity model. Where playing on something like 40 on Legacy would just be horrible. It would be really, really slow. But on linear, 40% for your X and Y is actually quite fine. And at the highest end I've ever seen people playing is like mid 50s. And that's, even that would be really low on Legacy. So I think those are the biggest things. Get in fights, set an X and Y that's realistic for you, something that you can adjust to, and don't be scared to go a bit lower. Practice in creative, put the time in, and you can get better at this. You will have to adjust your playstyle though, especially if you're someone who's been playing long range AR fights since Fortnite has been out. If you watch my stream, this is something that I struggled with personally when switching to linear, but it's just going to take a little bit of time to get used to, and the only way you're going to get used to it is if you get in fights. Hiding all game and potentially trying to win a game with 1 or 2 kills doesn't benefit you at all if you want to actually get used to your sensitivity. It's probably going to take you much longer than someone who just W keys or spends a lot of time in creative over like this coming weekend and actually improves the game. Also, since Legacy is getting removed, lots of people are in the same boat. So if you have friends that also play on controller, odds are they might be trying to adjust to a new sensitivity as well. So you can show them this video to help them out potentially. And they might be good people to potentially play zone wars or box fights with, since they're also going to be trying to adjust to a new sensitivity. They might be interested in playing that as well if you don't have a regular play group. I think there's also ways you could just load up creative and play like zone wars or box fights fill, but I've never personally done that, so I don't really know. That's going to be it for this video. I hope you guys found it useful or informative. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below, and I will do my best to answer them. And yeah, like and sub for more, and I'll see you guys another time. Thanks for watching. Dude, I'm so confused. GG's, bro. That was unfortunate.